All right, so for this section of the notes, we are still looking at 4.3.3, but now we're adding all the difficulty in. And so what that means is that there's no limit to the number of steps that we're going to ask you to do for these problems. You can see like this looks more complicated than the few steps we were doing the other day. And so we're just going to continue adding steps. But again, the 5 exponent rules stay the same. All we're doing is we're using more of them at once. And so what you're going to want to do is make smart decisions as in what order you go in so that you can make this as easy as possible for yourself. Because like when we're solving equations, there's numerous ways to solve this or simplify this, but some ways will leave you with less steps than others. So my first step always is going to be the 0 rule. And that's just because I want to get rid of anything to the 0 power so that I don't have to deal with that anymore. And so that'll just leave less work for myself. So in this problem I can see, I have d to the 0, that's gone. C to the 0 and f to the 0. So automatically I make my problem smaller just by using the 0 rule. Next, if you have them, you're probably going to want to use the power rule, because when you distribute in, like you can't do the quotient rule until you deal with this exponent. You have to get that exponent in, before you can do the quotient rule. So I always do the power rule after I do the 0. And so for the power rule, I want to distribute this 4 to everything inside the parentheses that's left. So on the top I just have b to the 4th, c to the 5th, and on the bottom this is a 1. 1 times 4 is 4, and then 2 times 4 is 8. And then from here on out you can kind of do whatever the problem makes sense for you to do. So sometimes that'll be the quotient rule, like this one. Since we have a fraction, it's the quotient rule. Sometimes it'll be the product rule, because you'll have like a few b's up in the top or something. Sometimes it'll be the negative rule. So just whatever the problem, whatever path it takes you on, just follow it. So in this case, I notice that I have b's on top and bottom, so I'm going to want to use the quotient rule. And remember, for the quotient rule, we subtract. Well, 4 minus 4 is 0, and anything to the 0 power is going to go away, so this actually ends up going away, which is nice. And so all we're left with is c to the 5th over d to the 8th. And then I just want to double check when I think I'm done if I'm actually done. So the things you want to double check, you might want to make a little list. Double check that you have no negatives, no duplicates. So that means like C should only be there once. And no numbers with exponents. So if I had like 2 squared, I would want to simplify that to 4. So in this case, I have no negative exponents, I have no duplicates, and I have no numbers with exponents. So this is my answer. So now the next one is multiple choice, and you're going to want to do it the same way. Solve it yourself and then compare your answers to the multiple choice options. What I like to do is, as I'm solving, I just keep checking to see if I can eliminate any options, and I'll show you what I'm talking about as I go. But that's kind of what I do. So remember, the first thing that I do is the 0 rule. Get rid of anything that you can. In this case, it's really only this x to the 0. Then do the power rule. So I'm going to distribute, and don't forget your 4 to the 1. So we're going to distribute 3 times, and we get 4 to the 10th, x to the 70th, and y to the 120. And then the bottom stays the same. So now there's a few routes you can take. The one thing that I notice is that I have a y on top and then two y's on bottom. And you can deal with all of them at the same time, or you can do the bottom first and then deal with the top. I like to just deal with them all at the same time. So I'm going to put kind of like a little shape around all of them, so I'm drawing my attention. And then I also notice I have this 4 to the 10th, and I just want to check to see what that is really quick, because we're going to get to a number that's too big. So you see, like, that is way too big to write down. I would say anything that's like 5 digits or less, 4 digits or less, you should write down. But everything else you can just leave as like 4 to the 10th, the number to the exponent. And then x to the 70th. Now here's how I deal with all these at the same time. So I know that the bottom are going to need to be added because they are just being multiplied down here. So I can add 20 plus 4. I don't know why I'm doing that in a calculator. It's 24. So we can add these ones, and then I know that the top needs to subtract the bottom. So I can do 120 minus 24. And I kind of do that all at the same time. You could do it in 2 steps if you wanted. So that's y to the 96. And then don't lose your little z down here on the bottom. And now I actually think that I'm done. So I have 4 to the 10th, x to the 70th, y to the 96th over z. I don't have any negative exponents. I don't have duplicate variables. And I do have 4 to the 10th, but remember that was a number too big to write down. So I can kind of look to see which one matches, and that is my b value. Now I could have automatically, after the first step, gotten rid of option A, because you see how this 4 doesn't have an exponent? Well, we know the 4 needs an exponent of 10, so automatically this one was gone, which makes me more confident that B is the correct answer. Now one last problem. So we have a problem here. We don't have any 0 exponents, so I didn't need to do the 0 rule, but I do need to do the power rule, and don't forget about the coefficient. That's really the biggest mistake people make with the power rule, is that they forget that 3 is its own person, so it needs its own exponent. So you have 3 to the 4th, x to the 8th, y to the negative 12th. And now I see a negative exponent that I want to move, and a number that I want to simplify. So 3 to the 4th is 81. That's less than 4 digits, so we can change that. X to the 8th is fine, don't change that. And now I'm moving y to the 12th to the bottom. And I have my answer. So again, no new rules, just putting rules together. Follow the path that the problem is taking you. Like with solving equations, everyone's going to do it differently, and that's okay. Just follow your instinct and do the rules, and you will be fine.